Operations Committee meeting to order. Kevin, I'm going to call the Finance Operations Committee meeting to order. It's Thursday, November 21st, 5:15. Present are myself, obviously, Councilman Audette and Councilman Atkins. And our first order of business is to consider applications for several boards and commissions.
Okay. So first of all, York County Cultural and Heritage Commission. I would recommend Dorothy Johnson.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Well, first of all, I went ahead and approved this one just because I looked at the dates on these, Allison. I'm sorry, guys. I got a cold. All right. I looked at the dates on this one.
Let me just say motion passes and then we'll.
Yeah, okay. This one was less than 6 months. I looked at some of these, and the rest of them are over 6 months. You know, as I think that I think Tommy and I are in a tough situation here, just because we have somebody coming on to the council that should have a fair shake. Now, when we look at this, I didn't mind passing this one, okay, but we're gonna go forward and then, but I gotta just tell you my concerns about this. So go ahead, next. Okay, Board of Assessment. My recommendation is defer till January.
Second.
So let me just say that you realize that it's the council person's job to appoint people to boards and commissions. And several of these do have circumstances that you may or may not be aware of. But even so, we've had this issue before with other council members, with new people coming on in the past, I would say in the past 3 years anyway. And so it's the council person's job to put people on. And so in this case, in the Board of Assessment Appeals, we have someone who has served the community very well. There was no one that wanted to really apply for this, and we went a long time with someone who was, I mean, a great servant to the community. And so she was willing to step down from this board and go on to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is also another critical one. The timing on that one is very critical. And that one has also been within the last 6 months. So, you know, we haven't changed any. There's not an ordinance change. There's nothing that's changed that says that a future council member is able to appoint board members. So I think we should continue on with the board members that have applied. And some of these have been in the works for quite some time. So
Well,
you'll have a new person in January, and there'll be board positions coming open, and their board positions in next February, next April, I mean, there are a lot of positions coming open, and
You've got 7 requests here, Allison. And look, if months ago, if you had come to us on this thing, we would have gone ahead and approved this. I wouldn't have had a problem. But I'm looking at the age of these things, and the only one here I see that's less than 6 months, which I think was in July, was the museum. Outside of
So
that,
y'all-
we're talking,
so y'all
we're
both have
beyond.
you both have people that haven't been appointed in over 6 months yourselves.
But Allison, you have an oncoming council member in your position, and it's not fair to them when you have things that are.
What's not fair to them? What's not fair is what's not fair to these people who that person may or may not appoint. And
Their
they
names will
apply.
still be on there. Don't make me do this.
Don't make you do what?
Do you remember in December of 21st, 2020, when Tom and Guffey both were coming on, and Brett Blackwell was going on? Do you remember when you did the same thing?
When I did this, what do you mean I did the same thing?
The motion was made by Councilmember Allison Love and seconded by Councilmember Christy Cox to defer reappointment of Jack Kimball or the appointment of Floyd Sweat, Patrick White, Bob Cornyn, Arnold Manning, Roger Colbert, Kevin Thompson, and Kima Sali to the Planning Commission, and at-large seat Robert Winkler. He opposed the motion, but the motion carried.
I don't
Do you remember?
I don't remember that. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that these
But Brett was going off in the same situation.
Yeah, and you know what, and when I was coming on, the person that was coming on, the person that was leaving when I came on, he also, you know what, I called him up and I said, would you be willing for me to appoint these people? Because it was right, it was December. That was a December appointment, and he said, yes, that would be fine, and I did that. But you know what, that was communication between me and that council member. It wasn't council members making that choice. That was communication between two people, an incoming and an outgoing in one district. I don't have that relationship with the person that's coming in. He's never reached out to me for anything. So what I'm gonna say is, if we defer all of these, I mean, let me just say this, I didn't pick the people. So you go to the Board of Disabilities and Special Needs, they picked Whitney, and they want Whitney on there, and it's urgent for her to be on there because they need her in January, and this still has to go to the governor for approval.
But I think though, Tom's point, which I had the same point, what took so long for the boards to get appointed?
Well, you've got boards that don't have people on. What's taking you so long?
I haven't got only one, and just soon as 30 days is up, I'm fixing to put my library appointment.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, there's...
Well, matter of fact, I think I had, didn't I have you go ahead?
Yes.
Yeah, but mine just quit.
The Lake Riley, and so did two of mine. And the Lake Riley Parks and Recreation District, they picked the person they want on here. They picked Dennis Kelly. I've never even met Dennis Kelly.
I understand, but we
And
just
Bethel
feel
Fire
that
Tax, Bethel Fire Tax Board, they can't even have their meeting because they don't have the people, and I don't know the people,
Well, I
they
won't-
selected them.
fight over it, argue over it. We just think that this is the right and fair way to do it. And a matter of fact, I would also say that I'd like to see a motion so nothing like this happens again.
But there hasn't been that motion at this point. The council
Can
has
we
not
not make
made
a
that decision.
referral to council that from now on,
The-
if any of us get voted out,
You have to bring that up to council.
well, that's
Yeah,
what that's
that'll
what
be
happened.
brought up.
But tonight,
Yeah.
these appointments,
That'll be brought up.
they fall under District 2 and they fall under the current council member. Am I correct in saying that, Michael?
Well, the appointment process is under the current council member, but the motion's to defer those appointments. It's an appropriate motion as well.
So you're gonna defer it so that the current council member can't select the people for those positions.
Well, when you look at these, Allison, again, look, this is tough for us. I think you put us in
I
a
don't
very
think it
tough
seems tough. It
position.
doesn't seem tough for you.
Well, it is.
Why?
It is. This is tough because look, we've always supported each other in getting people on who we wanted. But when you look at the dates on these things, Allison, I mean, these are old. This is there you have one that's less than 6 months and it's 4 months old. The other ones, I've got some on here that are close to a year. There's one that's close to 2 years old, and these seats haven't been filled.
What's 2 years old? I mean, listen, let's go back to Bethel Fire Department, because our chief will be reaching out to y'all tomorrow, I feel sure, on this one, because he's waiting on these people. And so let me just say that the guy who's coming in, he had a whole bunch of people apply to get them on there, and you recognize the names, and I just think that's crazy. Valerie Lynch is waiting to go on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and she needs to be on the Zoning Board of Appeals, Tom.
Allison, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I understand your position. I am just concerned about when we have seats that are open for such a long time and you have somebody coming off a council, you're hamstringing.
But we don't
the
have any,
president.
we don't work with those boards and commissions.
But
That's not our job. So let me say this, the boards of disabilities and special needs, they are waiting for Whitney to go on this board.
And once January starts,
No, it's
we
too
can-
late in January, because this still has to go through the governor. This board seat was filled a couple of months ago, and the lady let us know that she's not able to fulfill the duties. So that hasn't been that long.
So, Michael, on this one here, what is with the disability and special needs? Tell me a little bit about the requirements. I mean, they can't go on in January on this?
I do believe that one is required for approval from the governor's office.
It is, but the governor's office I checked into it, the governor's office hasn't been doing any appointees, and that's been across the state for some reason here lately.
Mhm.
Well, they're slow, but that's why they need her on there. They selected her. I've never met Whitney. Listen, I've never met Whitney. We'll be talking about this again at the council meeting. I've never met Whitney. I've never met Dennis Kelly, that the Lake Riley Parks and Recreation District selected. I only know one person on the Bethel Fire Tax District list. And
So-
I've met Amy Hutchins one time. These are not friends of mine, as someone might have you to believe. I don't know the people. And let's see who else we have here. I do know Margaret, but she'd be great on the Board of Assessment Appeals. And the lady that's coming off of that, you know what? She resigned from that because to go on to the ZBA. And so now you're not even willing to put her on the ZBA. And my girl just came off of the ZBA a few months ago, like August. So that's current. I mean, some of these boards are very hard to fill.
So this one with the Board of Disabilities, so there is a January requirement by the.
I do not know if there's a January
Okay.
requirement.
I mean, I see y'all both with your notes and all your stuff. And I'm just gonna tell you, we're gonna be talking about this publicly at the next council meeting, because you are
That's
absolutely.
fine, but you did it too.
I-
I've got it right here in paper.
So how'd you come up with all that? You just working against me, Tom?
I got a smart wife.
Yeah, but why are you
I'm working
against?
against nobody.
Why are
Right is
you-
right and wrong is wrong.
There's not wrong, it's the policy. It's county policy. The person who is the council person.
Do we as a
appoints-
board not pick who ends up? You present your person just like
We've
I do.
not ever
and
had,
then-
it's the district, it's a district seat. This is a district seat.
Well, then
And
there
you've
ain't no
never
need in us
denied-
voting.
You've never denied, we've never denied one for you or for Tom, and now you're gonna deny
No, but I
all
made
of
two
mine.
requests in one when I was early on, and you patted me and told me, no, I won't. And remember that?
Well,
I think we should.
Just
probably
pass things, she's gonna be mad either way, so I just hate
So we
it.
do it
Right,
as-
right is right, wrong is wrong.
All right, so we had a second on the zoning board of appeals, correct?
Second.
No, I'm sorry.
you have to just make.
I mean, the
make
boards will get full.
There's a pending
Sealed.
motion.
The same people will be on these papers.
There's a
The
pending
Board
motion.
of, Board of Zoning Appeals.
Assessment appeals. We're still on
Board of
the first
Assessment
one.
Appeals.
I mean, Board of Assessment
No,
Appeals, I'm sorry.
there's-
Yeah,
We're still on
We had
the
a
Board of
second on that.
Assessment appeals. There's a motion and a second.
there's a motion and a second on that, right.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Board of Zoning Appeals, motion to defer till January.
That's,
Second.
that's the lady who's coming off of who we've just replaced. She could have stayed in her spot on the Board of Assessment Appeals, and she came off to go on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Valerie Lynch, who I've met once in my whole life. I mean, y'all just don't, this is not gonna turn out. This is not gonna turn out. I need you to appoint the people for District 2 that fall under my term.
Again, this one has been open for a while, Allison.
It's been since August. She resigned in August.
It's not what I got. That's not the
Karen,
information.
when did she resign? Was it not August?
I don't have it in front of me. I mean, I can look it up, but I don't.
She
have
was
it.
gonna stay until the end of her term, which was September, and she resigned a month early.
Karen, can you look it up, please?
I can.
Thank you.
Can we go on to the Board of Disabilities and Special Needs?
Yeah, it sounds like there's a circumstance under this one.
There's pending motion right now.
Yeah, there's a pending
Oh, I'm
motion,
sorry.
yeah, let's finish this.
Bethel picked, they picked their folks. I mean, it's gonna be, not gonna be good.
I showed Barbara Cameron's term would have ended on February 2nd of '24.
No, but she stayed on until, we left her on there.
She continued to serve some until
Right.
whatever the date was, but her actual term ended in
And when did
February.
she resign? She resigned. So a lot of these, and y'all have done the same thing. We've left people in those positions for longer periods of time because there weren't other applicants and they were doing a great job on there and they've stayed over. So she actually resigned from that position. I think it was in September.
So why didn't we just reapprove her then?
She's on her second
That
term.
was her second term.
Yeah, but once the second term ends, aren't you supposed to be off the board, your time?
We're not putting her back on it. This is the new
Until your
person.
replacement is found, is how the ordinances read. Most of them.
Yeah, this is Valerie Lynch is the new person taking her spot.
She sent an official email to me in July.
Y'all have known you're gonna do this for some time, and you should have brought it up to council if you wanted that to be the way things were gonna, and you can do that going forward. You can do that in the next council meeting if you want to, because we'll be
So-
discussing this at that
Well,
meeting, but now is not the time to do it.
Now
because-
is the time to do it. We're in the middle of nominating who's gonna be coming.
No, what I'm saying is now is not the time to change the policy and how the county, how people are elected to boards and commissions.
Okay, but these seats, again, have been open substantial amount of time, Allison.
And so what does that mean? There's been people in them. It doesn't mean there hasn't been someone serving in that seat. These have not been neglected boards. There have been people in these seats. These are not neglected seats. The Board of Disabilities, we appointed somebody probably I don't know, when was it, Karen, like 2 months ago? And she's just let Karen know that she can't serve. And Whitney, they selected Whitney, they interviewed her, they selected her because she has a child with disabilities and special needs, and they've selected her. And they've already followed up and asked me when she quit, and I said, well, unfortunately, it's got to also go to the governor.
So July was when she came off.
Correct. She sent me an official resignation on July
Okay.
17th.
All right. All right, if I'm gonna stick to my 6-month rule, then I'm gonna change my motion. Motion to approve Valerie Lynch for Board of Zoning Appeals.
I abstain from,
You can't sustain, you just need to not agree.
not agreeing.
All in favor say aye.
There needs to be a second to the.
There needs to be a second.
Oh,
in order.
I'll second it. All in favor say aye.
All right.
Motion passes.
Board of Disability and Special Needs. Now, you don't know for sure that that person has to,
I do know for sure. Whitney has to, she does
but
have to.
I'm speaking with.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I do not know if there's a January deadline. I'm not versed in that requirement for tonight.
They want her on there. They're wanting her on there by the first
No,
of the year.
there's no requirement.
There's no requirement. I'm being
I think it's
a
a need.
Okay.
This particular board does run into quorum issues,
Mm-hmm.
but there's not a requirement that it be done by.
That'll be done, okay. Board of Disability Special Needs deferred to January?
Well, that's the problem. That one, they need her to be on that board. And so if you defer this to January, it's still got to go to the governor before she can serve on the board.
So there's a motion.
Tommy?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
No.
Lake Wiley Parks and Recreation District deferred till January?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
No.
Bethel Fire District Tax District deferred till January?
They can't meet until they can't have their next meeting because we've had everybody's come off and we've, one of the firefighters, his daughter passed away, and so we just found out that he's not coming back. So we're trying to we've got 2 seats we're trying to fill, and a third one is coming off next month. The third person is coming off, so they can't, at this point, they can't meet.
Why can they not meet?
Linda Sykes has resigned,
So how many seated members are on that board?
5.
But
So
how
they
many,
have
how many seats are filled?
2.
2.
Two.
If Linda does not come back for another term, she'll be done on December 6th.
Then there'll be one?
No, that'd leave the 2. Currently, there's 3 if Linda's still on there.
They can meet with 3. There are 2 vacancies.
Correct.
But she's already sent a letter of resignation. Karen's got that. So I would like to put Richard Lewandowski and John Orlando on there.
So we've already got a motion on the floor. Did you second it?
You want to talk to the fire chief more? Come on, Tom. They pick these people.
Well, then they'll get on in January.
They can't meet even until January. Fire tax board can't even meet.
Again,
It's unforgivable. I'm telling you, it's unforgivable.
Is there, I don't know if there's a second or
I
not.
didn't hear a second.
Second.
You did.
So you're not willing to put anybody on that board? All in favor say aye.
uh,
No. Motion passes.
keep York County beautiful, defer till January.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Uh,
No. Motion passes.
Okay, motion to approve for York County Library Nancy Nicholson for District 1.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
District 3, motion to approve Laura Millam.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Uh,
Aye. Motion carries.
Motion to approve for District 4, Terry Plum.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. Committee to consider allocations of funds from District 2 to Habitat for Humanity for amount of $2,000.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye. Committee to consider allocation of funds to District 2 for the Greater Things Ministry for the amount of $1,000.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Committee to consider allocations of fund to District 2 for Bethel Volunteer Fire Department, the amount of $3,300.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Committee to approve funds for District 2 for America's Boating Club in the amount of $1,700.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Committee to consider allocations of funds from District 2 to River Hill EMS for the amount of $3,500.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Committee to consider allocations of funds to District 2, River Hills Lake Wiley Lions Club for the amount of $900.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Committee to consider allocations of funds for District 2 to Tips and Trails Rescue and TNR for the amount of $800.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Committee to consider allocations of funds from District 3 to Newport Volunteer Fire Department in the amount of $2,500.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
The committee to consider allocations of funds to District 3 for the Men's Club of York County in the amount of $2,500.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Uh,
Motion carries.
Committee to consider allocations of funds from District 5 to Clemson University for age in the amount of $5,000.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, motion to approve minutes from October 21st.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, our next discussion will be regarding the local vendor preference. Is that you? It's here.
Okay, again, good evening, members of council and visitors as well. I want to, first of all, thank the council for affording me the opportunity to appear before you briefly to discuss the local vendor preference. As you know, we were charged by council member Watts Huckabee, and he stated as a non-agenda item during the council's October 21st, 2024 council meeting, basically that he'd like to refer this subject over to the F&O committee to work with staff to build out a local contractor business preference proposal that council could consider. This evening's intent is to provide an introduction of the local vendor preference, as well as identify supporting SWOT analysis, as well as the strategic plan initiative, also to report on research findings and to receive guidance from council for local vendor preference consideration. This evening's discussion directly correlates to the council's recent SWOT analysis and current overall strategic plan, specifically Goal 1, to grow economic opportunities, and strategy number 3. During the SWOT analysis, the council identified the following weaknesses or challenges: lack of small business initiatives, procurement process, local vendor preference, educate local companies, and inform companies in regards to bid announcements, opportunities for procurement initiatives, as well as small business initiatives. Now, I will say that the strategic goal as defined has both economic development as well as procurement components. As such, staff will be in concert with the Economic Development Department to accomplish the council's goals and objectives. This is a topic that has been a discussion. There's some historical reference to local vendor preference. In 2010, then former county manager Jim Baker made a recommendation to the council in regards to the local vendor preference. And this was in correlation to or in response to, at that time, the city of Rock Hill was considering a local vendor preference. And Jim Baker's response and his recommendation to council at that time. In 2016, there was an adoption of a resolution, and this was to endorse the establishment of a local subcontractor initiative, and this was as part of the capital improvements program that, as you all may recall, was a $109 million bond referendum. So there was some discussion during that time frame, and the council approved at that time a resolution, but we did not, and that was for that specific time frame. So we did not have a local vendor preference charge at that particular time. This subject also came up again as recent as in 2022 at the Finance and Operations meeting, and no action was taken at that particular time. So there has been some discussion, some dialogue in regards to the interest of the local vendor preference program, and staff is here to hear from council this evening in regards to some direction and what you'd like, how you'd like for staff to proceed, okay? This evening, we'll just go over a few things in terms of some of the things that you should consider with the local vendor preference. before I do that, I'd like to say that, we'd just like to clearly define local vendor preference. What does it mean? Okay, local vendor preference, as you can see on the screen, is an advantage given to bidders, proposals in response to a solicitation for products or services, granted based on pre-established criteria. Preference criteria are established by law and can include suppliers' geographic location, residency requirements, or origination of the product or service. So there are several components, several ways that we can impose local vendor preference, and at your will, staff will come back with some options available for you. Yes, sir.
So with this program, is there if there's a rating, so if you've got a customer or a vendor that is locally and is highly rated, I guess, when you look at it from whether it's you've received very good feedback from other people that have used them, etc. How do you, what is the breaking point between local and the value of their work, but the higher cost? Where is there, how do you weigh those things?
I think a couple of things that you're talking about. One is when you talk about their rating per se,
Right.
quality, that would be under an RFP where there's a lot of factors considered other than just cost.
Okay.
What the local vendor preference is going to be really on the just the dollar amount where everybody's viewed as sort of equal. They can all get the job done.
So this is outside of our
Yes, sir.
This is it.
okay.
But it
Very good.
could apply to both bid as well
Okay.
as an RFP.
Okay.
And I'll say that the lowest bid is not always selected.
Right.
Because there are other
Or
variables.
There's other variables,
as
right,
well,
and
too,
that
in
weighting
terms of-
scale is really
yes,
important.
in terms of references.
Yeah.
Do they have the appropriate license
Right.
to perform the job? So there are some other considerations.
Right.
Now, reciprocal preference, and I place that there because we are a border to Charlotte, to Mecklenburg County, and we do receive a lot of bids from Mecklenburg County for our projects. And one of the things that could happen if we are to impose a local bid preference, that same preference can be imposed on York County businesses if they were to compete for jobs
Okay.
in North Carolina or in Charlotte. So I just want you to be aware of that as well too. And sometimes they impose it's one for one, the same amount. If it's a 5% preference that York County decides to impose, that could certainly be imposed upon York County businesses if they would compete in Chester County or anywhere else, in Richland County as well, so, okay. Now, this information in terms of advantages, and I will share the challenges with you as well. This information is from the National Institute of Government Procurement Purchasing, the Institute of Procurement. And from the national level, they've advised that there are some advantages to local vendor preference. It's felt that it may stimulate the local economy activity, may support the development, enrichment, growth, expansion, and the retention of the local business community. And another thing that may apply is that the statutes generally are upheld in court, specifically when the state or the county can make a reasonable case that the statutes will achieve a legitimate state or local goal. And I think the takeaway from that is if we're going to impose such a preference, then it needs to be memorialized, it needs to be adopted. Okay. Also, as another advantage, it can attract new businesses into a community and thus favorably impact the tax base.
Sorry about the question.
Sure, no.
Yeah,
This is the-
so it absolutely is a great thing for the community, there's no doubt. How do you, so as long as how do we determine that they're actually local?
I think it's a-
That's,
Okay,
Yes.
gotta get to that, okay,
Get there.
very good.
that's one of the challenges.
Okay, yeah, gotcha, okay.
Okay, and again, this information is an excerpt from, there are several national procurement institutes that provide this information, and they're relatively the same in terms of their communication or their response to the local preference. One is that it can increase the cost for product services for all county taxpayers. And we wonder how could that be? Well, if we go down and if we discourage non-local vendors from investing resources in preparing a proposal, it reduces the competition. And thus, there's really no incentive, as it's mentioned here, for the local bidders to keep the pricing down. So that's something to consider. Also, there may be a challenge in terms of defending or defining a defendable fair process to determine the definition of a local business. What do we consider local? What do we do with the person who lives in York County, pays taxes in York County, but has the business in Mecklenburg County? Does local mean that you can have a temporary address in a construction trailer, P.O. box? So those are some of the things that we have to consider in terms of imposing the local vendor preference. Okay. And there's also something in what's tangible in terms of demonstrating that the preferences will yield desired results. There is a term that's used, and it's multiplier effect, whereas it's assumed that if the local vendor receives the award, then that money will be generated back into York County. We have no good way of measuring that. So it would be hard to justify how this has really stimulated the economy. It may, but it's just harder to defend in that regard. We have taken a look at some of the South Carolina counties. We queried them, we canvassed them. There were 10 counties that we canvassed, and the criteria for the canvassing was for the populations of 150,000 population. And this information in regards to the population is a result of the 2020 U.S. Census.
So each of these are doing local preference?
We have 6. The top tier there they have a current local vendor preference.
Okay.
The bottom 4 do not.
Yes, the bottom 4 do not. And York County historically compares itself to Lexington, Spartanburg, and Greenville counties. And as you can see, they're all in the no preference. Also, a point of note, Charleston County actually had the local vendor preference in effect for 16 years up until 2022 when they decided to abandon that practice. And the reason given is because they couldn't justify the expense that was incurred because of the lack of competition.
So they had it, but then they stopped it.
Yes.
But they stopped it because of a lack of competition. But-
Lack
Bids
of
were coming in
competition
higher
and then
because
at
less
higher
bidders were
pricing.
outside.
So, okay.
And that's sort of the overall quandary with this, the thing about $1 for a local community, that makes sense.
All right.
But also the fact that if you're giving a nudge to the local guy, the guys from outside won't be big as much.
Mhm.
And, you know, free market competition usually drives costs down. So Charleston had observed their costs were rising and they were getting less bidders from outside the area, so they went away from it. I mean, there's two sides to the coin.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because I think you did mention though, there's a flip side of the coin though, where if you had the preference.
The dollar
you're gonna-
theoretically
you-
floats around in the.
Right,
in the
you're gonna
community.
drive better competitive rates.
Not more competitive rates, but you keep the money in the local economy.
Well,
That's the
keep
logic
the
for
local-
the local vendor
Right,
preference.
right.
That's what y'all talked about there before.
Mhm.
But the challenge to that is with less competition, you don't typically
What's
get
the
the best
incentive?
price.
Mm.
Well-
This competition. Yes, sir.
My idea, whenever I even mentioned, you remember in one session we were having, is that it just seemed like to me we would prefer a local person, if they're capable of doing it, to, I mean, it's a long proven fact that whether we want to accept it, the best thing when some corporate stuff come in, it shut local community folks out, put them out of business, matter of fact. But the way I read it is we would prefer our local people first. But like you take like our local crane company, and this is something I know something about. The biggest unit they got's 300 ton. There's certain things that you would have to have the option to outsource out of the county because there's nobody here that does it.
Yeah. And there's some ways, and she's gonna get to this, of how y'all can decide how you wanna mix that recipe to balance that, to where you're not gonna be eliminating so much competition, all our taxpayers are paying more for services, but you still try to keep the dollars local. There's a variety of paths that can go down, and I think she's got a couple of
Yeah.
slides, she'll get to that,
Okay.
where y'all can see
But-
sort of some ideas that you.
But what I'm getting at is, and there's been, which I'm sure you know, multitudes of studies that have been done, in which a lot of times I question, do we need a study for everything? But it's noted that our communities and all, first of all, in a lot of ways, other than just maybe a short reference point, I personally could care less what other places are doing. That's just like me comparing my dairy farm to another dairy. You get what I'm saying? There's a lot of factors whenever you start comparing, different demographics, everything. But what I'm looking at is we don't have the communities like we used to. I mean, at one time in York, prior to the 1980s, we had all these local hardware stores and restaurants and all that. Well, as the franchise started coming in, it pushed them out. Same thing happened to the Parks houses. The same thing happened to the laundromat, everything. Everything's becoming corporate. And I try not to name names, but whenever you question why your food's got so much in it, it's because corporations took that over too. We're not, by not having local community stuff, we're killing entrepreneurship because they can't compete with these franchises and stuff that are coming in because they're on such a large scale. Like I told you the other week, when I see a milk truck pulling up to a convenience store, and it ain't got just milk on it, it's got the almond, all the oatmeal, they're playing all sides of it because they can afford to play all sides. So local preference to me means is that it's not that we wouldn't never have to outsource, it's that we would prefer to keep the buck here circulating before we would
Sure.
send it back to somewhere else.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. They go to sleep on
Page
me?
down.
Can you bring it? Okay. Thank you. Okay, and some of the things that you've mentioned there as well are some of the things that staff would have to consider to bring back to the council. Some of the things to consider would be to determine eligibility. Are we saying that York County, this local vendor preference is specifically for York County? Is it for the region? Does it include Mecklenburg County? So those would be some things that the council will need to make a decision on. And there are several types of local preference options. Do we want to, some counties will have a percentage and will afford the local bidder. If that local bidder is not the lowest bid, they'll provide a percentage if they're within, let's say, 5% of the lowest bid. Then they'd offer the local bidder the opportunity to match the lowest bid. So that's an option, and we could decide on a percentage. From my research, I've seen the percentage from 2 to approximately 5% in terms of matching a preference.
And those, as be a sliding scale when you get into the bigger projects.
Right,
The
right.
percentages go down.
Yeah.
after a
Right.
while.
Yeah.
That helps ensure still, our taxpayers aren't
Yeah.
necessarily paying more, we're just giving the local guy the opportunity to
Yeah.
match.
Well, see, the troubling thing is, okay, if you, like you're talking about land clearing, if your local guys only got D6s, but your bigger corporate fellows, they have to have D8s and D9s. They're able to move so much more, so much quicker, but in saying that local thing though, but what, the one with the D6s, he's still supplying local people with jobs no matter how long. That means the man's still getting a paycheck for another week. You get what I'm getting at.
So, yeah, I agreed. So on the different, under these different categories, if you can eventually maybe just, we break out the variables under each of them?
Yeah, like I think validating that's gonna be your,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we talked about the local preference
Yeah.
options. Are we gonna have a cap?
Yeah.
Or, particularly when you're talking 3%, 5%.
Right.
With some of the larger construction
Right.
projects that become significant, and you'll have to determine if that bidder is willing to make the cut.
Right,
Then is there a sacrifice to be made
Right.
with the cut as well too? So those are just some of the things
right,
I think
to consider.
probably one of the thing, and Tiara has a recommendation as to how she would define a local vendor.
Mhm.
And having been on the vendor side of this, I can promise you, I remember in North Carolina, we basically rented a phone number to have a local address.
Right.
And that made you eligible to be a local vendor.
Right.
You want to eliminate those type of loopholes, and basically, Tiara, you want to touch on sort of your thoughts as to what would be a
In
sound way
terms
to
of
define that.
validating
Yes, ma'am.
the preference, will they be allowed to self-report
Mhm.
and say that I'm a York County business, I pay taxes in York County? Or will the county have a more sophisticated method of verifying that information to include the taxes, reporting of taxes or verification, to include, it could be ownership of the business, or at least 50% of the business. So there'll be certain variables, and I'm speaking now when we're talking to larger contracts, that we really have to start drilling down to ensure, to verify that they are in fact a resident.
It's the thing, you know, roughly, like she used the example of you don't want somebody calling the construction trailer, putting an address on it, you know.
Yeah.
Have they been here for 12 months?
Right.
Have they paid taxes? Are they paying them taxes? And, you know, I think that, and she has this written up, you've been established a brick and mortar location here for 12 months before the bid, and you paid your taxes. Reasonable hurdles to define as local, because you gotta make sure you get that definition as local, because the vendors will try to find a way to work around that and consider themselves local. And so it's almost like whack-a-mole, you gotta make sure you think about those possible avenues to make sure what y'all define as a local vendor, because, you know, if you each had to write it up separately, y'all have 7 different answers as to what's local.
Correct.
But Tiara can sort of help provide some examples to y'all as to what is a starting point, and what she thinks is a reasonable, and I think she's done a very good job of defining local. And I like the ability we can verify your ownership of the business and you pay taxes. Who can argue that's not local?
Right, right, agreed.
Well, I can tell you a bunch of them right now that ain't local that are here.
So Tiara, tell us what generally happens, you know, we get in our consent agendas a lot of time, or even just on the agenda, we get the lowest bid to be approved, but in general, what happens, I mean, we've got a lot of categories that we're putting out for bid, number one. So that's something that maybe, I mean, does it have to be the same across the board, is question one, and you don't have to answer that now, just, that would be one of my questions. And then the second part of that is, what generally happens? I mean, are local people bidding and losing out? Are they coming close, or are they you know, are they way off? I mean, I would think that if you're local, if you're a local York County business, you would automatically kind of have a competitive bid against somebody that's coming from, you know, Charleston or Georgia or somewhere like that. It seems to me that the cost for you would be lower, and you should pass that savings on to your own county. So that's a question that I have in my mind. But you know, I don't think we know what's happening now. Like, what's the
Right. And that's gonna be a segue for, I'm gonna put in a shameless plug for my budget.
okay?
It's all in the timing.
What we'd like to do is, there is a module, a spend analysis module that will show us exactly how we're spending in the county, who's receiving that bid information, and just really a cost analysis, benefit analysis. So that's something that will be coming to council with during this upcoming budget, so that we can have that information readily available. Right now, it's a tedious manual process, because we want to define if we have a real problem, or if there are just some isolated incidents. And in regards to the bids that we receive from the local bidders, it runs the gamut. A lot of times they're very reasonable, sometimes they're close, and then sometimes we're wondering what happened. So, yes, sir.
Well, I know one thing, when you're talking about the irrigation, normal brick and mortar, all that, we got local. So we're also, as a county, if we do this, gonna have to consider, when you're talking about modular concrete slab construction, there's only some pretty big ones that ain't from here that can only do those. Now, most of that's in the warehouses, stuff like that, because they found out they can pour them slabs and get it done quicker standing. So,
But we're not even talking about just construction. We're talking about
Oh, yeah,
you know,
I agree.
Motorola versus somebody. And,
Right.
I mean, we're talking about that's what I'm saying. There's so many different categories of
There
things.
are.
but see, that's what I'm saying, we got to take in consideration on the planning side of how we,
Yeah.
It sounds like, and I think Tia's on her last slide over here, had already taken a stab at sort of drafting how some of these things would be defined. And just hearing the questions from y'all, I don't think y'all came today with like, we wanted to say
Yeah.
5 this to match the other.
Yeah.
We might have another meeting where we
Yeah.
can sort of go through some options and how I look at this, because I think council as a whole is definitely very interested in this and wants to explore it. And Tiara can sort of lead the way with staff as presenting some options that y'all got. This is what other counties do, this is how they do it, this has worked, this has not worked so great. And give y'all the ingredients where y'all can only come up with the recipe, how York County, how you want to find the local vendor. How you want to, give that vendor the opportunity to match. How you want to treat the big construction ones versus the smaller supply ones. So there's, it sounds great, but there's a lot involved to it. And this is probably going to be a multi-meeting topic. And, again, just hearing the questions y'all have asked over here, and I'll, of course, defer to y'all, but we can come back with sort of our idea of what the first shot would be, and then y'all can take it, and y'all can move the needle from there, adjust it down. Y'all want to get to until you feel like you're a good place that you can take it to all the council and say, we've worked with procurement, we listened here, we took her advice here, we moved this and adjusted this, but this is what the committee thinks is a good recommendation to make to all the council. So it's sort of my thoughts from what I've heard from y'all, and we can certainly be prepared to meet next time y'all meet to lay out some of those suggestions or starting points that y'all can then move around. And I think in one meeting similar to this, we can probably, from beginning to end, go through all the key topics and at least have the start of a solid recipe, if that's what y'all like to do.
So I've, just one thing, something that I learned early on council, that it was kind of surprising to me, but, and there are probably more things like this that council we're just not aware of as council members. But one of the examples was the dog food at Animal Control. And that dog food, there were dog food vendors, there was a particular dog food vendor that was willing to give us a much lower price, but we had to be willing to say that York County used that brand. And so, I was like, well, yeah, it's public anyway. Everybody knows because we're gonna approve it anyway. So, but the county was not, we don't use that vendor. And so that's a cost savings. And so it's not just a matter of sometimes, I know we're talking about local, and that's not a local vendor because there's not a local dog food vendor, but in a case like that, it's still something for council to consider.
You just gave me a new job.
Because we've got, if it's a lower cost, people don't realize how much dog food is bought, but if it's a lower cost, then, and there's something that's a tag like that, maybe that's something to also consider, why do we care if everybody that comes and adopts an animal at Animal Control gets a little thing that says, hey, we've been feeding this dog brand B, and there's it's.
Yeah. There was a little more to it than that.
Oh, yeah, there was a little bit more to it than that, but that's just an example of, we don't know the other things that might be,
Yeah.
Similar to that.
Yeah.
Well, right, because right, this is pretty big right here, really. There's a lot to unpack.
So-
when you.
Do y'all want us to try to, I don't know, how, we can be here as long as you want to be here tonight, but.
No, I
You
think you
don't.
ought to, no.
As a matter of fact,
If you
I
give
would
us
like
a week
to-
or so, we can probably have, again, lay out a plate of ingredients that y'all can start building.
And I will say,
Yeah.
while the council is deliberating and staff gets back to council, regards to an ordinance, if that's what you so choose, there are some things in short order that we can do to address some of the concerns council mentioned during the SWOT analysis, as well as the implementation of the strategic plan, and that's to do more outreach, vendor outreach.
Yeah.
So we can, that's something that we can do in short order.
This fits in well with economic development vision.
Yes,
How we move
Yeah.
forward.
Yes.
So this is good.
All right, well, we'll prepare the rest for the next meeting.
I just want to ask one more question. Does it make a difference to, okay, so here we are, York County, and we're talking about regional, where we would maybe have vendors from, they're coming, not that far. So I noticed that a lot of the counties that are not doing it now are larger counties, and they maybe have bigger resources, so here's what I'm trying to say. Even though they have more resources because they're a bigger county, there's still not a local preference.
I think you'll see like 3 of those are the ones we compare ourselves to the most.
Yeah.
Those are going to be probably 3 more conservative counties in the state. And this is not a political thing, but the whole free market, tilting of the scale thing comes into play to some degree. And you have to make sure you bake this right, because like Charleston experienced, they had some problems.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they did it, but we wouldn't want to copy that.
Right.
We
Yeah.
want to try to learn, and this is what Tierra's been working on, learn from those that have been successful and try to come up with the best program, because we certainly don't want to drive up the cost
Yeah.
to our taxpayers and what they're doing. But we also, to all of y'all's points, want to try to keep the money circling the county as well. So we'll put what we consider the best recipe together for y'all, and
Okay.
y'all can tweak and adjust it what y'all feel is the right thing.
That's great.
Yeah, that's
And so is there
Yeah,
a
that
specific
sounds good.
charge from the council?
We'll come back, I think of that draft ordinance components that
Draft ordinance.
we'll work on coming up on how we would put the topics we'd put in there for y'all. And we'll lay it out, but again, that won't be an ordinance or final. Y'all will be able to adjust and massage that at the next meeting that y'all have.
It's really a balancing act, and you think,
It is.
you would think that
It is.
you'd like for it to be like this, should be like this anyway. You'd like for those local vendors to be closer, and then if they're a little bit off, you get on that, but at the same time, sometimes, like, what Tommy's saying, some of those bigger companies can do it cheaper, and I just think I think the local vendors, I know some of the car dealerships have stopped, bidding and things like that over time. And the other thing that I think is important is to be sure that we've got a big list of vendors. A lot of times right after we say, hey, we're gonna do this, and somebody sees it at a council meeting, they go, well, I didn't even know I could have, I'm a landscaper, and I didn't know I could have put a bid in on that. So to let people know, to let those local vendors, and I'm talking about a lot of the smaller ones now, but to let them know that I don't know, maybe Greg does something that says, hey, if you want to be a York County vendor, this is how you.
We try, I tell you, we try to do that at every bid we have of them. I always ask the chair, how many do we send it out to? We have a master list, and the vendors and suppliers can go sign up to get, and they can sort of check the boxes for what they want to receive, and we'll send those solicitations. Certainly, always areas to improve upon, and procurement can attest, I'm always sort of nagging on it as well. We're trying to do that to the best we can. I'm sure there's areas to improve, and I'll touch on what y'all talked about a little bit. Back in 2016, this came up, the local vendor preference was discussed, and this is when we're doing big bond referendum projects. And what we ended up doing to try to help the local subs, because we didn't have contractors to build these buildings, complete buildings. So we had multiple meetings with local vendors, local subs, to try to help them tag on to the big vendors, okay? And Tierra was at those presenting, I was there over there, Michael, I think saw you, one at the government center as well over there. So, we've tried to do that. Again, we're never gonna be perfect, but we're gonna always keep working and try to get better and better. And that's something Tierra's group works on all the time, to try to make sure we're getting as many recipients as we can. Because competition's the king, and we owe it to our citizens to make sure we're getting a competitive bid on everything we do.
Well, I like the concept of a York County vendor list, right? And how do we advertise it more, and because I think it inspires vendors.
Well, we actually have a list of.
Right, no, and I know you do, I'm just
but in
saying, how do
terms
we
of
mark?
informing
But-
Yeah, start
vendors.
form, right, yeah.
But we,
Well, that's something that we could probably consider, reaching out to the Chamber of Commerce,
Good.
and some of those other
Right,
associations.
right, yeah, exactly.
We're gonna have a new communications department, certainly work with them.
but we also gotta, it's no secret that all the municipalities are allowing enough of outside sources to come into them.
We can't control that.
that's what I'm getting at. So you already got a vast number.
Yeah.
Find something else.
So,
Tom's gonna defer.
Oh,
yeah, so are we all set? So, okay. I want to go ahead and do a motion to defer on financial update.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We'll defer that to the next, to our next
Okay.
meeting.
It's a mixed meeting. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in
Does
favor,
that
say
mean
aye.
y'all ready to get out of here? Is that what I'm hearing? I've been talking about it for a while, man. I had 30 minutes of material here.
I didn't get to bed till late last
We
night.
know where you're
I understand. Y'all did get copies of the finance stuff, so y'all can mull it over till the next meeting.
Right.
All right. And hey, listen, how many of y'all realize my kids are sitting there?
I know they've been good.
You're gonna have to get a special
All right.
We're going to Chick-fil-A. No, there's a room over
I
there.
don't see you.
What's that?
Oh, you know, he said kids are sitting. Oh, there.